This is a presentation project done for the neural bases of behavior, and we're going to be talking about magnetoreception within magnetoreception and its role in the movement and migration of certain animals. First off, what is magnetoreception? Magnetoreception is the act of receiving and processing the magnetic field, which is the stimuli, and processing it in a way where you can better orient yourself and move within the field in an informed manner, which is the response. And this is often used in migrations and movement, mostly mass movement throughout the Earth. The issue when it comes to studying magnetoreception is that we have difficulty in specifying or identifying the sensory systems used. This is because the magnetic field passes through tissues, and as such, it could be possible that the organs can be tiny and dispersed and can be located anywhere. In addition, because these organ systems can be dispersed throughout the body, transduction can be done through localized reactions, meaning that it'll be even harder to pick out where this sensing occurs. There are going to be three hypotheses we'll be talking about. The first one is electromagnetic conduction. In this hypothesis, there are going to be conductive bars within the organism, and as the organism moves through a magnetic field, the charges will move and create voltage. This voltage can be measured, and because it's dependent on the field strength and direction, the organism can sort of learn where they are relative to this field and use it for navigation or for knowing where they are. There's the magnetite system, which is compass-like. They are magnetic crystals. It doesn't have the magnetite, but they're magnetic-like crystals which are attached to secondary receptors and sometimes membrane channels, which can lead to chemical reactions that can help inform the organism where they are relative to the magnetic field. And this is rumored to be the ancestral system within organisms, given its presence in bacteria or prokaryotes as magnetosomes. And the third and final sensory system hypothesis we'll be looking at is the free radical intermediate hypothesis, or system. Within the system, atoms will be paired, one electron is donated to the other, creating radicals, and the rate of the transfer of the electron and the back transfer is going to either change or conserve the spin state of the original atoms. This change is going to be dependent on the magnetic field, and this change can lead to chemical changes, which can be picked up and processed in order to inform the organism where they are using these changes. These are often mediated through photoreceptors, and all three of these can be used in migration. Over here, we have a bunch of sharks off the Gulf of Mexico, and they're pretty cool. These sharks are moving en masse past the Gulf in a migratory behavior. I wish I could tell more, but unfortunately I don't know a lot. The magnetic field is going to be the stimulus, and the behavior is a more informed movement through the migration routes or trials that they do seasonally. It's a bit uncertain which sensors or pathways they do, and there are two hypotheses. The electrosensory vestibular hypothesis, wherein it combines the first hypothesis we talked about. This time the organ, or the conductive organ, is the ampullae of Lorenzini, with the information collected from the sensory maculae, which is the vestibular system of the shark, which is going to give information of where they are relative to the center of the Earth and where they are relative to the magnetic field of the Earth. Any noises can be suppressed by the dorsal occipital nucleus, which can sometimes lead to habituations or blocking out of any noisy signals. Then there's the magnetoreceptor mechanism hypothesis, wherein there are going to be magnetite compasses, but these ones are going to be used more for the detection of anomalies rather than migration. Finally, the radical pair hypothesis wasn't ruled out, but it's not really researched as much either. This sensory system is useful in large environments with little landmarks, and it can help sharks create terminal maps. It can help them be guided through and direct themselves through trails. And as for how information is processed, it can occur within the cerebrum, which is responsible for processing and generating voluntary movement, and the cerebellum, which is responsible for picking up the movements of the shark. Over here, we see a nest of baby turtles hatching from the ground, and then we can see them crawling towards the ocean. These loggerhead turtles somehow know their way to the ocean, and they somehow know their way around migratory routes, even if they've never been there before. And it's been hypothesized that magnetoreception plays a role in this behavior. In turtles, the strength and inclination of the magnetic field is the stimuli which informs their migratory behaviors within the North Atlantic subtropical gyre. Active drifting is innate and is needed, otherwise the turtles will drift up the shallow predatory coastlines and get eaten. They might drift up into the cold northern Atlantic and freeze to death, or they might drift down to the southern Atlantic currents and be swept away somewhere. The neural pathways are a bit less studied, given their endangered status, and the only things I found out through the studies was that they lack electroreceptors or inductive organ systems, ruling out our first hypothesis. There are preliminary evidence of magnetic use or magnetite use, and the free radical organ systems remain unresearched for the turtles, given that they are under the water and as such photons may not be as abundant as they are in the air. Speaking of photons and the air, birds are in the air, and birds migrate through the air. And to the left, we see birds migrating these very conserved and very direct trails to the north once summer and spring hits, and to the south once fall and winter hits. To the right, we have a more intimate view of the migrating birds. This is them resting in the North American shores. And to save the best for last, this one is the best researched, or at least the magnetoreception of these birds are the best researched of the three species, or the three taxons I chose. In birds, the direction and intensity of the fields are going to be the stimuli that affects their migration. Unlike in sharks, the inclination of these vectors are used, and the inclination are going to help the birds distinguish which way is towards the poles and which way is towards the equator. If the field slopes down towards the ground, then it'll be poleward, while if it slopes parallel towards the ground, it'll be equatorward. Radical pair processes is present within the birds. Once photons are absorbed in the cryptochrome, which is inside the UV and the UVS cones of the bird's eyes, the singlet and triplet electron ratio is going to inform them of the orientation within the magnetic field. And this will help mediate where they have to go, mediate their travels, and these can also adapt to abnormal intensities in the field. Symmetric activation patterns can be picked up given that the eye is in the shape of a ball, and this can be used to further enhance information from the single-triplet ratios within the cryptochrome. These are going to be sent through the ophthalmic branch and the trigeminal nerve into the ganglion on the brainstem nuclei, and processing is hypothesized to occur in the dorsal medial rostral hippocampus and the hyperpallium. The visual lobe is also hypothesized to interact with such processing. The second sensory system is the magnetite-based receptors. These are a bit unknown as to where they are, but given that the ophthalmic nerve is used within this system, it's most likely in the upper beak of the bird. This gives information on the intensity, and it's mostly used in long-distance navigation, and the vestibular nuclei is often the one that responds to these stimuli. There's additional activity in the dorsal thalamus, the hippocampus, and the hyperpallium. For birds, because of these magnetoreceptors, mapping themselves in relation to the poles are innate, but their migratory routes can also be learned through experience. Further research is needed to figure out how information is processed, and the magnetoreception in this species is going to be useful, given that they are going to be traversing through broad and expansive landscapes. Given that they're also above ground, the prominence of light and the abundance of photons will help make the radical pair process system a bit more viable. Let's talk about the costs and the benefits of migration and whether or not it's worth it. You'll have to balance the time and the energy costs spent migrating with the benefits that you get from being in the new environment. Let's look at the costs first. It's rather self-explanatory. You're going to be spending a lot of energy and time towards migrating when you could have devoted that energy to finding resources, raising your young, or finding mates in the original environment. However, you could be gaining benefits from the new environment if the season is a lot more favorable and provides more resources, and if your original environment becomes more resource poor or more inhospitable due to weather changes. As such, migration may be maladaptive when your resources are stable in your original environment, because if the resources are stable, then the costs that comes with migration may outweigh the benefits from migrating to a new area.